Hi, welcome back to the channel where we got 3 builds for you today on this car. One is a viewer request, 2 are mine. So we best get to the workshop and get going. The car is of course the Adder, the OG supercar, based fairly loosely on the Bugatti Veyron. And when I say loosely, there's so many details of the car that are wrong, even though we have the general overall body shape, but that was of course the way back then. Each car we're going to build is 2 tones, and of course the colour distribution is all wrong, but we're not going to let that get in the way. We're going to do what everybody did when they built a car years ago, which was to use a lot more imagination and a lot less bespoke parts. So our first build is the Rembrandt Bugatti, because this is a Legends car. It was limited to just 3. They made a few Legends cars, this was the 4th one, and they named it after Rembrandt Bugatti, who was a 20th century sculptor, obviously part of the Bugatti family. He sculpted a tiny dancing elephant that went onto a Type 41 Royale. That was in bronze. Many of his things were in bronze, so they wanted to dedicate this limited edition car to him. And the car might be quite famous to you as a Manny Koshbin's car, or at least one of his many cars that you may have seen on YouTube. That was the viewer request that really made me decide to do this episode. So there's very little you can do apart from the usual performance armour bulletproof tyres, and you can move yourself down onto respray. And I think the best colour here for the Rembrandt one is a metallic chocolate brown. It then just comes down to what pearlescent you pick. The colour needs to shine a little bit more than it is doing a standard, and I think the bronze here, that looks really nice, the bronze pearlescent. For the secondary colour we will actually pick bronze, so again into the metallics. How much of this video will be me trying to find the right colour? There we are. So these 2 colours, standard GTA colours, I think look really good, and even though the distribution is wrong, they very much evoke the Rembrandt Bugatti. Moving on down to suspension. The Rembrandt is not that low, but I think you could go down 1 or 2. I think we'll go just with lowered suspension for that. Onto the wheels, there's a few that work. Now the first one I'm going to pick and put on the car for you is Super G from the high end. The wheel colour is already bronze because I've been playing around with this of course beforehand. Now the reason I picked these is there's a lot of black inside the wheel and bronze on top. These are not parallel, but I don't think you should just slavishly pick a spoke pattern when you're doing the wheels. I have been guilty of that, and it can lead to other facets of the wheel being ignored. I like the general colouring and look of this wheel. I think it gets quite close. Another one that gets quite close, even though the pattern isn't quite right, is the Mercy. The standard Mercy again puts black on the edges of the spoke. It gives a lot of the look. Synthetic Z is the one if you're slavishly following the spoke pattern, but I just don't think it looks as good. And you can also go into track and take, I think it's called throwback. Here, this, a little bit like the Super G, has got some black along with the spokes, even though the spokes aren't parallel, so any of those would do. I think I'm going to just stick with the first choice here, the Super G, and we'll take this out into the sunshine, have a little look at the Bugatti Rembrandt. Now, I think this looks good, and you know, if I hadn't known this car had existed, I would never for 1 minute have thought of painting the thing in chocolate brown. But with the bronze pearl, the bronze accents, the black and bronze wheels, this really does evoke that car. I'm pleased with this. This was a build I hadn't even rushed to do because I thought I don't want a brown car, but I like it. Anyway, let's go in now and look at the next build. Next we're going to build Not just a SuperSport, but the 16.4 SuperSport, one of the faster SuperSports with 1200 horsepower. Now, like any of these builds, it's going to be very quick. So we're rushing down, of course, to respray, where we will go with a classic black. For the secondary, we're going to go with a classic orange. Onto suspension, I do think it should be lower. I think competition actually works the best for this one. And then onto the wheels. Well, there's one wheel that I think matches the pattern the best. It's in track near the bottom. It's called Ice Storm. Selecting the wheel. Now, we do of course have this little diamond cut edge and the split rim nuts. Now, those are not ideal. Those are not on the wheel that we're going for, but the spoke and everything is so close, the pattern, I really just want to stick with that. And the wheel colour, of course, to match the stripe on the body would be orange. So this is my completed build. If you don't like the split rim nuts, you will just need to nip through the wheels and find something that's similar that is painted solid. There are all sorts of options, but if we just went through things like the Cheetah RR, I mean, it's not perfect, but that style of wheel would get rid of the other bits if you want. But these ones are so close. So let's take a quick look at this out in the sunshine, and we'll see what we think. Okay, so here we are. The hobos really like it, so I think we have the vote of appreciation from those guys. And yeah, I mean, like so many of these, I say imagination is required on these earlier cars, but I think that's worked out okay. Let's go in then for the third build. And this is the Veyrons 16.4 Grand Speed Vitesse. Rather long and unwieldy name, which basically means it's the Targa version of the SuperSport we just looked at, and still has a respectable 1200 horsepower. So there's going to be very little to change. We're going to go straight down. In fact, let's do it a different way. Let's go down to the wheels. And for the wheel type, a real defining feature of these cars is not just the spoke pattern, but also the huge amount of shiny alloy of some description that we have on the wheel, as well as the paint colour. And I spent quite a while on this, and one wheel really stood out to me as being the best one, which is this solar. Spoke pattern isn't quite right, but the way you see that it distributes the colour and the shiny works very well. Okay, the reason I've started with the wheels first is, of course, I'm trying to match wheel colour to stripe colour. And we also need to talk about the main colour of the car as well. Let's start then on the wheel colours. And I think you have two options. The first one is going to involve going on to baby blue. And this colour is pretty close. So we now have to match baby blue with a secondary. And this works really rather well, because you can take a light blue secondary. Now, I don't know if they're the same colour hex or not. It is possible to check that, as you know, from some of my previous videos. But it's a really good match. So onto the primary colour, which is a very dark blue. I haven't done a crew blue, and you'll see why in a minute. But the closest I have found is go into the metallics and then go all the way down to midnight blue. This doesn't work in the classic, only really with the metallic. And then for the pearlescent, you don't want anything as bright as they've given there. Something like a dark blue metallic. And that just sort of gives you that really, really dark blue that's not quite black. Works pretty well. So we're going to take this out in the sunshine first. This is the first possible build for the car. I think this works rather well for the colour. And whilst the wheels and the stripes match, I find them a little pale. So if you can do crew colours, I do have an alternative coming up. Also in wheel colour, we have fluorescent blue, and I just fancy this as being the better colour. But if you go with fluorescent blue, there is no matching secondary that you can put on here, and I don't like the mismatch if you use any of the other colours at all. So this is why I'm now using a crew colour for the secondary, and if you're using a crew colour for the secondary you cannot use one for the primary, which is why I didn't attempt to match the blue bodywork. Here's the code for this colour on the screen now, and this blue is this blue. I used techniques I've shown in other videos to match the colour of the wheels with the colour of the bodywork. Hey, we now have the car in the sunshine, so we'll have a proper look, and this is how I'm going to store the car for the foreseeable future. That's why I did this build third. So let's take a good look at this and see what we think. Well, I think it works really well. You can now see better than the workshop that the wheel and the stripe colour are matching. As mentioned before, I'm happy with the dark blue. And overall, despite the colour distribution being wrong, of course, on this old car, I think this is the closest we're going to get. So there we are. That's 3 different builds for you for the Adder, 3 real-world builds. Let me know down below which one you think worked best for you, if you're going to do one at all, that is, and why. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Of course, any other requests for cars, please let me know down below. I'll do my best to fulfill them. There's been quite a gap in videos up to this one, I realise, and I've only done this one because I had it pre-prepared and could do it relatively quickly. There's going to be another gap, I'm afraid, of probably at least another 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm really sorry about that. It's just personal commitments, etc. I mean, I haven't had the full time to do what I would like to do. But there will be plenty more videos coming up, including a tour of this supercar garage. That's why I can't take it in for you now. That's all for the future, but for now, if you could just click the like button on the way out, it would be much appreciated. And thank you so much for watching.